talk loud so that everybody can hear. You can't turn that fan off. That'll alleviate a bunch of noise. I'll hit that switch in the back. I'm Luann Gambini. I'm the treasurer of the Historical Society, so I welcome you. Couple advertisements. We always have to do advertisements, right? We have the tractor show coming up on Saturday at the park in Boyertown, and it is always a fun event. We had it last year, and I'm not a tractor person, and I had a ball. So just so you know about it, it was fun. It goes from 10 to 3. It's at the park in Boyertown. We have food vendors, and we have probably like 100 tractors will be there, and some other huge big equipment that I don't even know what they call it, but it's really big stuff. They bring it out at night because there's no traffic, and to bring it through town. I should sneak out and watch. We're also going to, I don't know if anybody's been reading in the Boyertown Bulletin the stories about the Mighty Atom. I'm the person who wrote all those stories, and we have, I actually met his son Jerry. So cool, it's so
I met
exciting.
the old man.
What?
I met the old man.
Did you? There's a lot of people that have great stories about that. Anyway, so we're going to run a movie at the State Theater on November 13th. The Boyertown Vehicle Museum and us are getting together to do that. Afterwards, we're going to have a little, like a reception down at the Vehicle Museum. I talked to his son, and his son will be in Florida, so they can't make it, but he wants to see if his son, which will be the grandson, can make it, but I don't know yet, but that's just something coming up. We have our Bell Snickle in November and our holiday tour at the beginning of December. So just watch Facebook and our website to see what's happening, but we try to do a bunch of things. Okay, now we have this guy today. His name's Rodney, and I've known him like for years. But what we put in the bulletin to describe it was, our program tonight will be about the Wheelwright, our own member, Kulp Kolb, will be speaking to us about the Wheelwright trade, Wheelwright, wagon makers, carriage shops, and the surrounding communities. The Kulp, K-O-L-B, and the Kulp family, Wheelwright, circa around 1765 to 1931. This includes 6 generations of wagon makers in New Hanover Township. And Rodney is proud to say he's He is a descendant, maybe dependent, of this Wheelwright family, and devoted to the art of wheelwright trade, and he has lots of good information for us. Rodney.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. We're going to talk about a wheelwright, what a wheelwright does. I thought everyone knew what a wheelwright did. And I was sitting at my job a couple weeks ago, and I asked the younger fellas, they had no idea. They had no idea what a wheelwright was. So, a wheelwright is someone who makes horse-drawn vehicles, makes wagon wheels, carriage wheels, anybody who's involved in building wagons and carriages, sleighs, wheelbarrows, push carts, anything that requires a mode of transportation. So, what tools did the wheelwright use? Well, I have some tools up here. It's a little dark, but it doesn't work. It does work.
There you go.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, there's some tools up here.
That would be my size. Thanks, Jim.
There we go. Okay. So there's some tools up here. I'm not going to show all of them, but a wheelwright used a lot of different carpenter type tools and some very special tools, especially when it came to putting the wheel together. We're going to show you a couple just quick, and you can come up and look at them later. But to put the end on a spoke, you needed a cone tool, which was used on a brace and bit. Okay? After the cone tool pointed the spoke, then you needed a tenon cutter. Some tenon cutters were one size, some were adjustable. Very expensive tools. Even today, these are very expensive tools. This is a $200 tool on the end of my brace and bit. So they weren't ever cheap. I read stories in the 1800s where Wheelwright's tools cost about a laborer's 2 years' salary to purchase. So, buoy wrenches, planes, molding planes, a spoke dog, which I'll use Robert and Richard's wheel here. But when you put the wheel together, so you needed to make the spokes fit in the holes, and sometimes they're just not working well that way. So you took the spoke dog and you pried it. And you pried it over to get the spoke into the felloe. So let's talk about that. The wheel had three major parts: the hub, the spoke, and this is the felloe. The wood part is the felloe. And then the steel tire went on. But the hub had to be turned on a lathe, and then the mortises had to be cut in. Tenons have to be cut onto the spokes and slid in, and then the end of the spokes would be pointed and then taken down to fit in the hole. One other tool I'll show you, and then you can come up here later. Besides all the knives, the draw knives, the spoke shapes, this is a traveler. This was used to figure out the outside of the wheel. So there's a measurement on there, and you went around the wheel like this, and you measured the outside of the wheel in inches. I always do it like 6 or 7 times to make sure it's right. And that's how you figured out how big to make the steel tire that went around the wheel. So if you get a measurement of 74 inches, take 1/8 to 1/4 off and cut it, because when you heat it orange, it's going to expand. Put it over the wheel, and it compresses everything. Right? So I'm going to just let you look at that stuff later, but that is, I started a wheelbarrow wheel up here with the spokes in it, but you can look at it later. Okay, from what we read, the Wheelwright did a 10-year apprenticeship, usually starting when they were 8 or 10 years old. What type of wood did they use? Okay, I have 2 hubs here, and the hub on the wheel, but these are basically made of elm. Elm is good wood because the wood grains go like this, and it's less splitting. Okay, the spokes, I've had spokes that were oak, I've had spokes that were hickory. The fellows were cut out years ago in half circles, quarter circles. They were cut out in 8 pieces, and around the turn of the century they started steam bending them and making 2 halves into a wheel. But hickory bends real well. So let's get into the local carriage and wagon shops in the area. There were 2 types of shops in this area. They were the family business, small shops. Basically, you had the father-son business. None of them lasted very long. A couple of decades, couple of generations, and then you had the big shops. The big shops, for example, on the slide here, this is Watertown Carriage Works. Josiah Swinehart started this in 1872. This was a large shop. They were putting out quantities. Large quantities of carriages and wagons. They employed people, where the family businesses didn't employ people. These were much larger shops, blacksmiths, in-house, doing all the work, and putting out quantities of new vehicles. If you were with a couple weeks ago, the Historical Society went to Gruber Wagon Works. So we all went up to Gruber a couple weeks ago. If you want to see a wagon shop with everything in it, this is the place to go. There's tens of thousands of tools and parts in this place. This side up at Blue Marsh Lake, when the dam was put in, the Corps of Army Engineers took it and moved it to the Berks County Heritage Center, and it is a beautiful example of what a wheelwright shop looks like. and what the inside looks like. It's the only one I know that has everything intact as well. This was a shop that employed 20 people. It ran from about 1880 to 1920. In its heyday, it was putting out over 150 farm wagons a year. And it was had a blacksmith shop in-house and a ramp. If you notice, all the old Wheelwright shops had ramps that went to the second floor. Usually the paint shop was on the second floor to keep the dust away from everything. Green Lane, Yost Brothers Carriage Works. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this building. Yost Brothers started about 1875 and moved into the turn of the century. This is the second building. The original Yost Brothers Carriage Works burned in 1902, as well as the blacksmith shop that sat behind it, which was Miller and Force owned the blacksmith shop that sat right behind the works. Both buildings were rebuilt. This one still stands. The blacksmith shop does not, from what I understand. There's a Yost Brothers tag. I've only seen that tag on a vehicle one time. There used to be a farm that had a sleigh down on the 663 Hill Road that had Yost Brothers tag on it. And I know there was one at the Exton Mall at one time. This shop was in Springville. This was a large shop too. Lawrence Brothers. They employed people. There's not a lot of information out there about it. I haven't found much. But this was tore down, I believe, in the 40s to make room for a street in Springville. I found this on the back of a map. This was on an 1870s Montgomery County atlas. This is DS Old House Carriage Buildings. This was at 4th and Dodge Streets in Pennsburg. The only place I've ever seen anything on it is that map. But this was a large shop, as you can see. There's carriages up in the top here, there's carriages in the back, and there's a blacksmith shop on the left side. Another place that employed large amount of people to work there, and they put out quantity. Lots of carriages. I pulled this out of a postcard book. It's a picture of a funeral wagon. That's what they call them, funeral wagons. But if you look in the back, you can see the DS Old House Carriage Works. This is the building that sits in the back. That's the only known building only picture I know of that building. But I pulled that out to show that off. But other than that, I know nothing about the carriage works back there. Now this is a small carriage works. This is probably a wagon shop. This is at Swamp Creek and New Hanover Square. Maybe the man's name was Geist. We're not sure. We've looked into it. But I don't think the shop was there that long. A couple of generations, and that was it. This is on Hopkinsville Road between Hill Road and 663. This is where J&H Auto Repair is. This is listed on an 1870s map as J. Kulp Wheelwright. This probably is a relative. We don't know. I haven't figured that out yet. But it may be a nephew or a cousin. But this is where Harry Gallagher's auto repair shop is. There was other shops. Okay. Bauman's Apple Button. Everybody knows where Bauman's is. But Bauman's made wagons and sleighs and carriages before they made apple button. They also had a timber mill in the back side. And Mr. Bauman does have a sleigh from his shop. That's inside his house. But that's what they did before they made apple button. There was also small shops at the top of the hill. If you know where the hubcap barn is, or was, going down toward Pennsburg, at the top of the hill there was a shop called Mayberry's or Mayberry's Wagon Shop. Lasted 2 generations. There was a shop at Culp Road and Coot Creek. There's no building there anymore. And that's what we're going to talk about in the local community wagon shops. Other than, we know there was a Fisher Brothers in Bechtelsville, there was a shop in Eschbach, there was a letter house in Bally. John Culp was in Pottstown. John Young was in Pottstown. There was Miller in Pottstown that did some wheelwright work, and there was a few shops up in Oley. Butterwick was on the main street. Other than that, there's very little out there about these shops, even though they existed for a couple generations. So let's talk about the Kulp family that came here. So there's two prominent Kulp families in the area. One is the Mennonite family from the Skipjack, Bluebell area. Dealman Kulp was the fountainhead of their family that came over in the early 1700s. They're Mennonites, that is not our family. Our family are German Reformed. There was an Uncle Conrad that came over in 1732 and settled in New Goshen area. He eventually moved to Allentown, and most of those Kulps in that area are from his family. Most of them settled and went to New Goshen Church. There was a George Michael, a Peter, and a Melchior that settled here. They came over in 1732 on the ship Robert Malice that owned the port in Philadelphia. And when they got here, I don't know what happened to them for 12 years. We don't know where they went, but they were out of Neckesheim, Germany. So from 1738 to 1750, I have no idea where these people were. But by 1750, they had started buying land down along Hill Road in Broomstick and Ipley in 663. So Peter, don't know what happened to him, we're not sure. He may have moved to Berks County. Melchior bought land. If you know where 663 and Wild Run Road is, he bought a piece of land there, 110 acres. George Michael, our ancestor, he bought land down around, I think it's between Broomstick and Hill Road. He bought 105 acres and settled in down there. He was a farmer. I put this up here because I'm going to talk about a bunch of family members, and it's easier to look at the succession. Okay, so George, who came over here as the immigrant, he was born in 1709 and he passed away in 1790. He stayed in the edge of New Hanover Township. If you notice the spelling, K-O-L-B. Every Kulp that came over here spelled their name K-O-L-B. Although if you look at a lot of the documents, you'll see that they spelled it C-O-L-P, K-O-L-P, C-O-L-B. They spelled it all different ways. The name wasn't changed until the bottom here, somewhere around the turn of the century. My great-grandfather started using K-U-L-P. However, we have cousins that still use the old spelling. So, okay. So here's a 1750 map. And here's my ancestor, Michael Kulp, George Michael Kulp, 105 acres. And over here is Melchior Kulp. That's around Wild Run Road in 663. So these are the old plot plans there. The reason I know where this is at is because if you look up here, you'll see the Daniel Borneman Farm. Daniel Borneman Farm is the one that's under the reservoir. That's the one that they covered with the reservoir, and in '99 the park put the path in and they destroyed the cemetery. So we know where the Borneman Farm is. So we're very close to that. So the water, we're thinking, is right in here somewhere. So, okay. So, going through the succession, George Michael Kulp's son, George Michael, couldn't think of other names, they named everybody the same, born 1744 and died in 1826. Sometime around 1765, he starts a wheelwright shop somewhere in the vicinity of Spinnerstown, Milford Township. We don't exactly know where, but he's gone over to either Bucks or Lehigh County, depending where the farm was, and he's over there. He marries a lady named Nita Stillwagon in 1769, and he works as a wheelwright over there. He is a member of a battalion of colonial militia in Milford Township, and he is in 1780 going to move back to New Hanover Township and purchase a piece of land at Church and Coldflesh and Houseman and Little Road. He's going to purchase 100 acres. This is the indenture or the deed for that property. It's dated 1780, and he actually buys it from a man named Bernhard Fryer. The house was built in 1771, and he moves in 1780 and brings his wheelwright shop to that area. But these are pictures of the original home built in 1771. This is not family. These are actually the Brzezinski family that lived there when the pictures were taken. But if you look at the house, it's an old farmhouse. It's stucco over stone, and I believe there was a stone in the house that dated 1771. A little wooden bicycle. That's Bill Brzezinski, right? Okay, this is what the farm looks like today. The house was torn down in the 40s, I believe, and the brick Cape Cod was built there. I don't know that too many of the original, I don't think the original buildings other than the spring house are at the farm. But George Michael, owning this farm, he actually was, we believe he was at Valley Forge. We know in print that he was building ambulances for the cause. So we're still looking for documents that say he was a tradesman in Valley Forge during the encounter. But we have documentation that he was building ambulances for the colonial cause. His son George takes over the estate, becomes the next wheelwright, and lives here most of his life. George was born in 1775 and dies in 1833. There's another picture of the property. There's a spring house. We believe this to be an original piece here, but not the rest. The house, I believe, sat up into there. So George, in the later part of his life, he buys 5 acres across the street to the right of what is now Little Road. Little Road wasn't there. Little Road was a farmland. So you just had Kulp Road and you had Coldflesh Road, and Little Road was just a farmland. But he bought 5 acres on the right side in 1825. And in 1830, he bought on the other side of Little Road another 5 acres. And then he built the house in 1829. He also built the barn. So, George is an old man. He's building the barn, the house. They say he just helped supervise the building of the barn. And the first part of the house that faces Church Road. So, in George's will, he is, the way it sounds, he talks about his plantation. I believe he is a wealthy man. He accounts for everything in detail. He talks about his plantation, his fruit trees, his crops, and how firewood must be cut for his widow on the back door. And he talks about breaking up the property, giving some of the children pieces, and John, which we believe this is John Paul, but we're not sure, the next generation of wheelwright. We believe this is a picture of him. This just surfaced a few years ago. And John is given the wheelwright tools and everything to do with the business because he says in the will he learned it from me. So, John Kulp has 3 sons that live to adulthood. Joshua, Henry, and John. This is the first time all 3 children learn the wheelwright trade. So, we've located some day books from John Kulp. And if you look at the day books, you can see here that he does work. He does work for a Mr. Roth. He makes in the Harrowman and a flail for $2. Below he makes a wagon. You look here. I enjoy a wagon block for $16 for Johannes Bled. Now, this was in German script when we got this. You couldn't read it. So a lot of this has been translated by a friend of mine, Ron Becky from New Hanover Township. He spent a summer doing 25 pages for me. And Ron had spent the summer working on this, translating it into German and then into English. But if you look at it, he charges $16 for a wagon in 1840. I looked at this, and in today's money, in 2022 money, that would be $544. So obviously inflation has caught up here.
I have a question. Under the $16, it says für den Wagen zu beschlagen, $20.
For the wagon outfit. I'm guessing he got another one, and he got it outfitted
Okay.
for $20. So wagon prices at this time range from about $15 to about $23, I guess, depending how big and fancy it was. But I only know what Ron translated because I'll show you a picture then of what the German script looks like.
Ron, they use that term beschlagen, to hammer, literally to hammer something together, like an oven beschlagen, is to put a stove together.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
that's why I was thinking maybe they were putting the rims on the,
That would be
Yeah,
part of
so-
it, but just hammering the whole thing together.
Okay.
Beschlagen, a stove or anything. So to assemble, to hammer it together.
Sounds good. I would think that, except the other new wagons and stuff don't say that. They don't add the labor. They're only $16 to $23. So I don't know. I don't know. So here he does another new wagon for $16.50 for Mr. Emmerich. He does fix the wheel for $2.50. He works for Johannes Zern from the Zern family. And he does a wheelbarrow for this fella for $1.25. So he's doing more work here. Yeah. So I want to bring this to your attention. So in 1839, he does work for Samuel Hartman. He builds him a new wagon for $20. So I looked this up. Samuel Hartman is, if you're familiar, John Hartman was a general in the Civil War, and he's governor of Pennsylvania. This is his father. When this was done, the governor was 8 years old. So he's working for the Hartman family and lived over on Cross Road off of New Hanover Square.
Rodney, is that the plaque for Crossroad for Heart Rent?
Yeah, that's him.
Okay.
That's him. That's the general and the governor.
Yeah.
Okay, these are what the pages look like. This is what I gave Ron Becker. Okay, so I really can't even read the person's name. So this is what Ron had when he did the translation for him. He had 25 pages of this mess to work with. It takes me 10 minutes to figure out what a letter is. But Ron seems to really enjoy doing this. It's German script. It's old German script. He called it a U language or an L language. It must be a language from a certain part of Germany that he was able to find an alphabet. Ron found the alphabet. And he, so this is a tract of land, the original 100 acres that seems to have just gone by the wayside. This is from the late 1890s. So this is what's left of the 100 acres. You have 43 acres here. Sam Saylor is a relative. Hartzell's got the store and the post office in Ennis. And the public road there is Kulp Road. This is church. And this is Kulp Kolb. This is the wagon shop and the house that was built in 1829. So at this point, Joshua Kulp has it. Joshua was born in 1836 and died in 1887. He was only 50 years old. But if you look, you see the ramp again. All these old wagon shops had ramps to get the wagons up to the second floor to paint them. And if you look, this picture's a little seedy, I know, but the bearded man in the front is Joshua. William's over with the horses, his son, and these are probably William's sisters. But this is the original part of the house that you see in the front here. The other part is built about 1885 by Joshua and William. And we believe sometimes that this wagon shop was maybe moved across the street. Remember, they were Pennsylvania Dutch, they were German people, they didn't believe in waste. And from the old pictures, the wagon shop just looks too beat up and old for it to have been built at the same time or after the house. So we believe it may have been moved across the street. So, this is a stamp I have in one of my Undertaker books up here. If you look at it, it says Wheelwright and Undertaker, Pleasant Run. It's the only acknowledgement of them being Undertakers that we know of. But they were Undertakers for a while. I was told it stopped after they found out the bodies had to be embalmed. And the grandchildren were playing in the coffins in the barn in the 50s. There was coffins left in the barn that were handmade. So
You and I did that. We played that. Remember that?
this is another photo. It's a little softer. It's hard to see, but about 1880, about 1880 for these films. So there's another photo of the wagon shop. This is just a picture of the wagon shop. On the left side, you can see a ramp. And you can see this is Joshua's son, William, and William's brother, Joshua R. He was the blacksmith in the shop in the earlier days. He married a Katie Wood, and he moved to Lansdale area. So this is Joshua L. Kulp, fourth generation Wheelwright, and his wife, Catherine Rotenberger. Well, I'm getting to that. I know what you're talking about, but I'm getting to that more. So this is fourth generation Joshua Kulp and his wife Catherine Rotenberger. This is a picture of them in their younger days. You can see she's much younger in the face. And we believe that's his son William on the lap there. Picture probably was taken by 1861. This picture I just recently came across. This is Joshua's brother, Henry. Henry is one of John's sons who actually moved to Pottstown, opened up a wheelwright shop in Pottstown, eventually moved up to Reading and Persona. He had a cabinet shop up there, and then he worked for the Pennsylvania Railroad. He did the intricate work on the parlor cars himself. I don't know much about them. I don't know any of their descendants. So this will be my great-great-grandfather's brother. This is Joshua Kulp, Joshua L., born in 1836. This is his school book. This is his math book. I have this book. It's nothing but math problems. There's probably 100 pages of just math problems in the book. So surprising thing is, in 1852, he's 16 or 17 years old, which is surprising that he's still doing schoolwork. I haven't looked into that yet, but typically a Wheelwright was, he should have quit school at the age of 8 or 10. Okay, this is a map from 1870s. And you can see, here's a Joshua Kulp Wheelwright shop up there, the house and the shop. You can see his Uncle Philip has the farm, the original farm. This is another Uncle William has the farm across on the left side. And this is his cousin Sam Saylor, living over here. Okay. We'll go into William here. So, what they're building up there on top, anyone know what that is? Well, you know what that is. Does anybody else know? That's a racing stall. That's made to go to the track and race. So they're building racing sulkies. And that's what that is. Does anybody know where this is at?
Yes.
Okay, this is a hotel built in the 1750s at New Hanover Square in 73 across from the post office. Recently got a nice blue colored paint on it. This is the back of the hotel. And in the backyard was the Sulky racetrack. If you look at the 1870 maps, you can see the racetrack on the back. Right here. Here's the racetrack. You can see it's all dotted out. W. Wien Hotel, that's it. So they were racing Sulkies down there. That's what you wanted me to talk about. There's one in the Bortolone Museum over here. We don't know if it's ours or not, but it's the only one I know around. But that's actually a racing Sulky. It does look like our build, but we don't know. Now, we'll go to the 5th generation of wheelwrights. William is on top there. He is the 5th generation of wheelwrights in this country. He starts to change his name after a while to KULP. He's born in 1860 and he dies in 1929. This is William as an undertaker. He did the undertaker trade. He's got his top hat on. My uncle had the top hat at his auction, but I didn't get it, so I did see that top hat. This is another picture of William. So what did William do? William was a wheelwright and undertaker, but he also did mill work. He worked at mills with his cousin Sam Saylor. They did millwright stuff. They repaired mills. They built new wheels for mills. They also made furniture. And they did acting. This is William and his brother doing some acting. I know he was over in Pottstown at the Opera House doing some acting, doing some local acting here in his younger days. So he was an actor. There he is sitting with his cousin Sam Saylor, the one he did millwright work for. And these are William and his wife Mary Sauerkraut in their older years. They're pretty much up in age. This was taken in 55. She died shortly after that. And I don't know when this was taken, but it has to be in the 20s. He's pretty old there. Again, this is the tag about the wheelwright and undertaker. These are up in these books here. It says W.H.R. Kulp, wheelwright and undertaker. Notice he's using the KOLB in his stamp. This is early on. He's using the KOLB name. Pleasant Run. This is a bill head from the wagon shop. Notice now he puts himself water W.H.R. Kulp, KULP, wheelwright, all kinds of new work and repairing, also dealer and doing second-hand wagons. This is 1915. This is the only one we know exists. If there's other ones out there, I'd like to see them, but this is the only one we know that exists. So there's one bill head like that. This I found, this is a promissory note from William Kulp to his father Joshua in 1884 from the National Bank of Bordertown for $40, and he had 60 days to pay it. Can't imagine that they were that business-like that father and son borrowed $40 and had to pay it back, but evidently they did. So this is from one of William's day books. The day book was used, like John's day book, for the everyday affairs in the wagon shop. So this is one of William's day books, and if you look at the name on the top, John William. Now, we talked about wagon shops and carriage makers and repairmen. This man was neither. He was a dealer, like we would use a used car dealer or a new car dealer today. That's all he did. He didn't buy it, he didn't build anything, he didn't repair anything. He just sold things that he had bought and made profit. There's an advertisement down on 663 on the barn in 1906. I don't know if he had stuff there or if it was painted on the side of the barn. But if you look, so William is selling him express wagons and buggies and farm wagons and other types of wagons and a whole list of them. So this man was actually getting, and I found more entries from this man, this John Wayne. He seems to have had a lot of money. But he was buying wagons from William, he was buying used wagons from William, he was also getting William to do repair work for him. So if you go down 663 toward Pennsburg, and King Road goes off to the right, you'll look ahead of you and there's a stone house on the left and a stone barn on the right. This is where he had his advertisement. I do not know if that was his place of business, but it was called the Pennsburg Carriage Bazaar. Right there it is. So this dirt lane out front here is what we know as 663 today. This was in 1906, but you can see his advertisement on the side of the barn there. The house and barn still sit there, and you wouldn't know it, but I have pictures here and you can see. There's the barn today, taken from the inside of my truck, but there's the barn. There's the barn and the house. And this is from Kings Road, and 663 is up in there. This is an entry in the day book where it talks about butcher wagons. So there was a man by the name of Calvin Cheney, had a butcher shop in Zasmansville. And here William was doing work for him. He's building butcher wagons, he's repairing the butcher wagons, he's putting new wheels on them. A lot of repair work done there. And sometimes Calvin Cheney came over with a fresh veal to pay his bill. This happened quite a bit from what I understand, where people paid with lumber or beef or whiskey or whatever they had. Here's another one from Calvin Cheney. You can see he bought an express buggy here for $30, and he bought a farm wagon here for $50. That was a fairly cheap farm wagon in 1909. I found most of the wagons ranged in price from $60 to $80 at that point. Here's a drawing inside. He calls this ruts. Now, it took us a while to figure out what that meant. He kept talking about ruts wagons, R-O-T-Z. It means small and plain, and it's a way to describe a runt of a boy, a ruts. So it's a small wagon. So this is one of the drawings inside the book. This one here, he's drawing. This is, I believe, a baker wagon that they built. They built commercial wagons. And he's drawing, this reminds me of a baker wagon or a greengrocer wagon at the time. But this is from one of the day books, and you can see he's drawing a fancy commercial vehicle. This is another part of the day book where he's doing different repairs, and here comes a new ruts wagon. And I don't understand it's $5. I don't understand how a ruts wagon doesn't cost more than 2 wheelbarrows, but for some reason it must be a really little wagon. Okay. So this is a billhead from W.H. Force, William Force. Did a lot of work for William. It is amazing how much blacksmith work went into a farm wagon. The amount of steel on a wagon or carriage is unbelievable. I can't imagine how long it took a blacksmith to put the steel on the wagon. It is amazing. So he's going down the Green Lane. This is the shop behind Yost Carriage Works. And he's getting stuff worked on from Force. He's also getting things shipped to William Force from a place called Cray Brothers Hardware in Ohio. Now, I assume it came down to Force because there was a railroad station there, and it was close for him to pick the stuff up. But if you look, Cray Brothers bill for hubs, spokes, rims, 1961, and he had to pay for freight. Cray Brothers is in Ohio. So when wagons were built before the Civil War, they were pretty much built from scratch. Everything was made from scratch, and I have stuff from John's day books where he's spending the day turning hubs. If you ever turned hubs, it is a long, long process, even with a modern lathe. And the lathes they had were big wheel lathes with a treadle. And I have some pictures of them at home, because we had one. So now, after the Civil War, they're able to go to hardware stores, like we would go get lumber. They're able to buy hubs, and they're able to buy spokes and bent rim felloes. And they're buying things. He's going down there, and I know it's on here somewhere, but instead of having his wheels done by rubber tires for carriages, he's having Yost Brothers do it. Yeah. Yost Brothers bill for rubber tires, $11.50. So he's having Yost do them. It's easier for Yost to do them probably because they do them repetitiously in the big carriage shop than him doing them. Here you can see another bill where he's actually buying tools. He's buying file. He's actually getting tires done for a man named Dickman. And here he's credit by settlement, $12 for wheelbarrows. That means at that time, the blacksmith bought 2 wheelbarrows from him for $12, because that's about what a wheelbarrow cost, about $6 at the time. So he's paying in his blacksmith fees by giving him wagons. I saw he did a doctor's fee too by selling. The bill was $68. He just made him a farm wagon. Here you go, Doc. That pays my bill. So this is the actual Force blacksmith shop. I don't know if this was the first one or the second one. I don't know if this was the one behind Yost or the one that was over Maple Avenue. Do you know? Do you guys know if that's the second one or? Okay. I have some pictures of what wagons we know and stuff was made in the wagon shop. So this is my granddaughter, Addie, and we're down at the Folk Festival this year, and she's standing in front of that cart. So there's one item. There we are up at Berks County Heritage Days at Gruber Wagon Works back in the 90s. Those are my 2 children. In our great Uncle Ray's wagon. That wagon was made for our great Uncle Ray by his father. The twins have it. And there's me pulling my daughter around in the wagon. That's you, right, Bob? That's Bob, right? There's Bob, and the wagon obviously got a prize that year, and this is our great Uncle Joe. Joe was the last surviving person to work in the wagon shop. Joe was William's son, second youngest. So that's great Uncle Joe. There are my kids again. We got a different ribbon on there. We got a yellow one. Oh yeah, that wheel there is sitting right here. There's my daughter. There's a little wagon sitting in front of Robert and Richard's house. There's my wheelbarrow that was made for my Uncle Earl when he was a boy. He was 10 years old when his grandfather passed away, but that wagon sits in there. And the red wheelbarrow behind it, I bought from Paul Hafer that owned the Body Works years ago. What do you think, 30 years ago? Not quite 30 years?
1990.
Was it 90?
Yeah, that's when they shut down.
So Paul had that in his barn on Deep Creek Road, and he said to me, he said that was made in the Kulp wagon shop, but we don't know if it was made by William or Joshua, and he wasn't sure either. It's a little different than this one. But you can tell by the handles, they feel the same. There's my granddaughter in it. There's a wheelbarrow that the twins have from the wagon shop. That is a Kulp wagon, all pinstripe, and it's in beautiful shape. It's in private hands. You know where it's at? That's a sleigh the same people own. That's a Kulp sleigh that went up for sale years ago at auction. That's a wagon. Which one's that? Is that the one I tried to buy? And he wouldn't sell it. Okay. This is one at Pleasant Run. Okay, this is one. See, we didn't get them all. People would rather see them run away in pretty cars than sell them to us. So this is Robert Richard's front yard. You can see the 2 wagons and the big hay flat in the back. The wagons were made so that you could put a box on. You could take the box off. You could put the pieces on the end, and you could lay the hay ladders on.
So now, Rodney, like, since I really know nothing about this, so, like, does each wheelwright have their own distinguishing feature or a little thing on it, or like, how do you know all that?
Some of the big carriage works had tags. Like the 2 tags I showed in the beginning from Yost Brothers and Lawrence Brothers.
They put a little thing
They
on
put a
it?
little tag on them. Ours didn't have tags. but we've seen enough of them now to know what they look like.
Like you have a certain way of doing a wheel or something like
Yeah, they
that?
have a certain way of putting the box together. They have a certain way of putting the front undercarriage. The front undercarriage is square,
Okay,
as opposed to a lot of them that are V-shaped.
okay.
But you can tell. And
I had just seen you at the Goshenhoppen and you go, I think that's our wagon.
yes,
And I'm thinking like, well, like, how do you know that?
because of the way it's built underneath.
They were made stronger too, they had more protein.
And they did use a lot of
Volkswagen
spokes.
material.
The wheelbarrows you can tell easily because they made a mid-stroke wheel and the handles curl down. Very few of them have curled handles. And if they're in the New Hanover Township area, it's pretty easy to find out that if they're original, they were from there. They did work for a lot of people. I have lists of hundreds, maybe thousands of people that they worked for. So
Okay.
there's Robert and Richard in their yard with their collection. There's my granddaughter in front of the flower wagon. The Goshenhoppen historians have this. This is from the Monroe Snyder Home Flower Works, right? The flour mill. And I believe I have this at home in the day book where it was sold again. I have to look, but I think I did. So that's a 2-horse wagon. Most of them are 1-horse, that was a 2-horse wagon. This is one of the hay wagons that is being used to load hay on. You see they put the hay sides on and just keep filling it and filling it. That's Calvin Shanley's butcher wagon from Salisbury. That's in front of the Congo Hotel. So that was built by us. This is Harvey B. Kulp, Green Grocer, Beckelsville. This was built, this is Harvey. This was William's brother John's son, Harvey. He is a grandfather to the older fellas that own Kulp Rent a Car. So that's him. He became a minister later in life. This I put in here. This is made by, I believe this was made by us. I'm not sure, I haven't found it. But this is Hoffman's Bakery in Red Hill. But if you look at the pinstripe and the shape of the wagon, it looks like one of ours. If you notice the hay flat out front. So this is the Abraham Lachaw farm. This is on Swamp Pike, and you'll see the trolley going by there. This hay flat, I actually have the record of sale in the day books at home. This is right down the street from your house, Bob. This sits in where the development road goes in. That was where the Lachaw farm was. So that flat is there, and the trolley goes by. This is in the Auto Museum. This is a sleigh that was built locally and bought new in the Gilbertsville, New Hanover area for a rentier. I'm still working on this. This might be one of ours. This is one of the last things made in the wagon shop. This is a truck body. This is toward the end of the wagon shop when they started. Obviously, there were so many cars out by the 20s that there wasn't a whole lot of need for wagon work anymore. Most of the big carriage shops shut down in the teens. I believe Watertown shut down in 1914 and started building truck bodies. So this was the last attempt at, building things for automobiles. But this would have set on the back of a car, slid into the trunk, whatever. And this was built in the wagon shop. There was quite a few of these from what I understand. There's one left, it's at my house. So that's the only one we know that exists. And this sulky we had talked about earlier, this may be one of ours too. This is a toy made for my grandfather sometime after 1890. And if you look, the horse rides on a wagon fellow. This was made in the shop for him. And like I said, he was born in 1890, so sometime after that point, the rocking horse was birthed and built. There's my granddaughter on it. So she's the 5th generation of the Kulp family that rides the rocking horse. So it's not real big. Pleasant Run Hotel. If you don't know what Pleasant Run is, this is a private home now. But the twins have documentation where we purchased the land and built the hotel, Joshua and William did, and then resold it. And this is what the hotel looks like today. It's a private house. 1875, a sign was painted by my grandfather. This is a cradle that was built in the wagon shop and was shaped, I know that. This is another cradle. And this is a walnut rocking chair that was built in the wagon shop. So they did make furniture, they made library tables and other things. So we know they built wagons also for Werner's Bakery. They built wagons for Kramer's Bakery. So they were doing some industrial work in the area. I believe Kramer's was in Schwenksville. I'm not really sure. About 40 wagons a year, that sounds about right. So, okay. So this being the original wagon shop, okay. Okay, so there's very few tools left in the wagon shop. This one came out. This is a drill knife that came out of the wagon shop. But not many are. So this is an auger that came out of the wagon shop. If you look at the top handle of the auger, it's burned. And I'll tell you why. So it's a little coincidence, and there's a lot of speculation as far as how this happened. We don't know for sure. But remind you that around the turn of the century, there was a lot of vagrants walking around trying to sleep in people's barns. So I got this clipping from Pennsburg Town and Country newspaper dated Saturday, July 12th, 1902. Thieves at Ennis. Thieves visited the carpenter shop of William Kulp one night last week and selected all the best tools they could find. They had quite a lot of burned matches on the workbench. The tools were already on a pile to take along, but it seemed they heard some noise and they fled, leaving their booty behind. This is the second place in a short time visited by thieves here. So that's July 1902. August 23rd, 1902. Fire at Ennis. The carpenter shop of William Kulp of Ennis was destroyed by fire last Friday morning at 2 o'clock. The family was asleep and the fire was not discovered until it spread all over the building. The dwelling had also caught fire, but it was extinguished before much damage was done. 10 wagons, lumber to the value of $40, tools and other valuable goods were consumed. There was a small insurance policy on the building and the contents in the Goshenhoppen Mutual Insurance Company. So, was it people sleeping in the shop? Was it vengeance? Was it, you know, I know I had heard from other people that if the vagrants would come around in the area and they would ask to sleep in the barn, that the owners would take their cigarettes and their matches so they didn't burn the barn down. We don't know exactly what happened here, but I took the cost of 10 wagons at the time, and I took the cost of the tools and the lumber. I have no idea what the building would have cost, but at that time, I believe it was about $1,000 in 1902 money that they lost. When I reverted it to 2022 money, it comes out to $33,600 was the loss, not counting the building. So eventually it burns down and a new shop is built. And this is the house on the corner of Little and Church, and you can see the new shop was built by a man named Schwenksville in 1902. The tree was marred, the tree was scarred. I just recently got a picture this past week of the shop with this tree next to it, but the tree that sits there was scarred by the fire. And you can see how it has lines in the trunk. It's still there, and they say years ago the tree was opened up from the fire. The tree was not big when the fire was. You can see there's more scarring on the tree there. We took pictures of it. This is the farm and house in 1959, this picture was taken. You can see the house, the shop, and the barn The barn was built about the same time as the house, and I believe the barn was tore down in '66, right? Because I don't remember. About '66, the barn was tore down. Yeah. So there's another picture showing the barn. The barn sat along Little Road. And there's a picture of the house. There's a recent picture of, and not when I say recent, but in the last 20 years this picture was taken. This was a couple years ago. The shop's not looking good here. There's another picture. Okay, this is this past summer. So we went back and visited the new owners who are actually here. And they are so kind and generous. They let us in the shop. They let us look around, and Bobby found a box that was in there with his grandparents' name on it. This is the upstairs of the shop. Mr. Collins is doing a wonderful job securing the building. If you can see the layered wood, they're rebuilding the shop because it's very shaky. You can see all the timber he's put in. It's over in the top floor of the shop, where the paint room was. This is taken from the shop looking down at both farms. So these were both farms from 1780 until present. This is where the Kulp family lived. Random pictures we took this summer. So this is a painting that Robert and Richard had done. Did Julie Longacre painted this of the wagon shop a few years ago? So I just want to talk about a couple things yet here. So we recorded some reminiscing of people that are long gone that talked about the wagon shop. Mike, so we talked to some people years ago about the wagon shop who were, in their 80s and 90s, 30 years ago. And I have a couple here where we talked to a Mrs. Presley. Presley's lived down the road on a farm. He owns Spring City Knitting Mills, but she, as a child, remembers her father was a wheelwright in Schwenksville. And she told us how very often her and her father would take a buckboard wagon up to the Kulp wagon shop, and he would buy wheels from William. Evidently, William was building wheels and supplying a lot of wheelwrights in the area, because she said when you went into the top of the shop, there were sets of wheels all over. There was nothing up there but hundreds and hundreds of brand new wheels built. So he was selling other wheelwrights wheels. I have another reminiscence from a man named Merrill Erb. Merrill Erb was born in 1915. And he talks about going up to the shop with his father to see William. He remembers looking through the window and watching William and Harry assemble wheels. And Harry's my grandfather, so obviously he was working in the shop at the time. He was building wheels. He quit school at 8, so he had to be doing something. So what we can tell is the three older boys, Harry, Joshua, and Willie, probably worked in the shop. The two younger boys, Ray and Joseph, were much younger. They probably did labor work, cutting tongues out and things like that in the shop. And we know, I had talked to the youngest girl, Mary Rosenberry, and she had told me that the girl's job was, when they brought in butcher wagons and baker wagons, they would scrape all the dough and the residue on the bottom of the wagon out so they could be painted and repaired. So this is the 6th generation of the family working in the wagon shop, my grandparents' generation. So we're sure they worked there. Obviously, the wagon shop closed shortly after William passed away in '29. We know the family was trying to do repairs, but by then the older boys were of middle age. They had families of their own. And obviously they didn't have enough repair work. I mean, it was 1929. There was a lot of automobiles in the road. So they kind of gave up the work and they moved on to their other jobs. They became painters and carpenters after working in the wheelwright shop all this time. I do have something where my father is talking to his dad, Harry Kulp Jr. is talking to Harry Kulp Sr., and he talks about a movable metal stand, movable parts, and he told him that he used to build wheels on that stand with his father. So we know that the last generation was working in the wagon shop. Unfortunately, time changed everything with the advent of the automobile. There was no reason to have a wagon shop anymore. But as far as we can tell, the Kulp wagon shop ran from 1765 to 1929, 1931, probably the longest business in the township or the county, probably the longest wagon shop in the country as far as we know. We don't know of any others that have reached that length of time. Roosters up in New York claims to be the oldest, but they didn't start till 1810. So we're not real sure. So in the end, in 1931, in June, there was a sale at the wagon shop. I know my grandfather didn't want to have the sale because the Depression had just started, you know, the year or so before that. But someone insisted on making sale, and they had sales and nothing brought anything. So it was pitiful. There was sleighs selling, I had the paperwork at home, for 15 cents. There was wagons selling for a quarter. The most expensive thing sold that day was a mahogany or walnut desk with ivory inlays and push buttons, a secretary that sold for $4. So it was a loss. There was no money made. And that was the end of the wagon shop. Thank you for all coming out and listening to my boring speech. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Good job, Kate.
Can I ask you a question? Peter, we're under